James.
Raf.
Well.
Well.
Am I right?
Yep. You're the one who said it.
Airbnb. Been a while since we talked about them, I feel like.
No. We come back to Airbnb once every 9 to 12 months.
I reckon once a year. It's an annual occurrence.
It's an annual occurrence. We come back and Airbnb gives us a reason to come on crawling back.
But this one has so many down round areas.
It really is. It's perfect. As soon as the story came out, I was texting Raf and saying, I know what we're talking about this week.
Yeah.
This is a heater. This has got everything we love.
Obviously, lots of ways we could approach this. I was just kind of riffing with you as we walk towards the studio. Airbnb's WeWork moment.
Mm-hmm.
This is just the taste of what's to come.
I
guess that's it. If you're not across this is where we're going. We're not just going to talk about Airbnb's business model and stuff, although that will come up.
Yep.
We've done an Airbnb episode years ago, 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago.
Yep.
Brian Chesky, Airbnb. It's being revolutionized, folks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is actually a great way to launch the episode. The Wired article.
Yeah,
Great article where Brian Chesky spoke to Wired, Stephen Levy. The article is titled Airbnb is in midlife crisis mode. And then the subtitle is CEO Brian Chesky is spending hundreds of millions of dollars to relaunch his travel company as an everything app. Fitness, food, microdermabrasion.
Now, yeah, you know, dear listener, you the listener, that we love an everything app.
We do.
The West's quest for an everything app.
Yeah, exactly. The efforts by any number of Western technology companies to make the app where you do everything. After looking at WeChat, the Chinese everything app, where they do everything from talking to friends to purchasing car insurance to watching videos to whatever.
Let's do that, but in the West.
Let's do that in the
And
West.
again, not to rehash, we've talked about the everything app before, but one of the key issues here is, the key differences is that in the West, we had credit cards, and in China, they did not, and they used QR codes to pay from bank accounts. And that kind of like fundamentally, there's a path dependency there, as well as we've said before, there's just like, we here in the West, we like brands.
We love brands. We love
different brands.
We love compartmentalizing and segmenting things into different apps, which we'll get into.
But fundamentally, I feel like the credit card and the debit card story versus like scanning QR codes within an app that allowed for payments that was also a social media app. That was just a divergent path.
Yep.
And so like trying to move back towards like, hey, you know how currently you use Uber in a different app? Like, what if you used it within Facebook? Or what if you used it within Airbnb? Like, that's what we're talking here.
It feels awkward. Anyway, so just to give you a sense of what Airbnb has done, Brian Chesky. Also, I want to pause here and say that people in Silicon Valley really love Brian Chesky.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to lie. He's definitely cringe millennial, but he's not my least favorite of the founders.
No,
he's a nice guy.
Yeah, I have no problem with Brian Chesky, but what you will notice is that people like really idolize him for some reason, and he must be like an absolutely magnetic person in person, and you can I think you kind of pick up on this vibe when you read interviews with him and watch interviews that he's a pretty charismatic dude. But what you hear VCs and other founders, all these other people, that even when Airbnb is doing weird shit, they're always like, I don't fully get this, but I trust Brian Chesky.
Yeah.
This guy is like a genius. He's like a product visionary, blah, blah, blah.
Paul Graham's essay, Founder Mode, which we referenced, we did an episode about at the time. Must have been a slow news week.
It must have been.
But that was specifically using Brian Chesky as the example of like this difference between like a manager mode, like a manager, MBA CEO versus like founder mode.
A founder who's like
still getting involved in the details.
Who is like obsessing over, the 3 pixels of kerning between the font on a header on one particular page of the website.
Yeah, and still doing things that don't scale, but doing it with a large company, and actually this is just like an alternative mode of running a business.
And it's their vision that's absolutely leading the company, and they're not just managing to extract as much value as possible and delegating everything.
So we haven't heard that much from Airbnb in a while, realistically.
The last time we heard from them was Brian Chesky saying that the balance had fallen too far in favor of hosts
of the landlords
and not guests.
And
he came out with like, here are the 100 things we're going to change. He had some big bold thing.
But this is important, like in that, like that was their business. This kind of balance between the landlord and the renter.
Exactly. I mean, every
bourgeois and the worker.
Yeah, exactly. Every platform business is this. There's two sides.
It's a marketplace. It's a marketplace.
It's a marketplace. Whether you're Uber or Airbnb or Airtasker or whatever platform you may be, your whole business as the middleman is balancing the two sides of that equation.
But point being, Brian Chesky does not want Airbnb to simply be a rentals marketplace.
No, he wants it to be an everything app. He wants it to be the hub through which you book all ranges of human experience.
Yes.
It's not just a hotel app anymore. It's not something where you can get a nice cheap apartment in the thick of it when you travel to another part of the world, or a nice big beach house where you and your friends can all hang out, and then receive a bunch of chores from the host to complete before checking out. Put the bin bags into this particular bin. Don't go into this room. You must replace the sheets. You need to steam clean the carpet.
Yeah, make sure that the dishes aren't just in the dishwasher. They have to have been fully cleaned and replaced.
And if any of our neighbours see you, I'll kill you. I'll shoot you in the head.
Yeah, exactly.
So he doesn't want it to be that. He also wants you to be able to book haircuts.
Yeah, haircuts and maybe a Pilates class.
A tennis lesson.
This kind of thing. Everyday stuff. Oh, and also, by the way, be your national ID.
The platform for and we'll get into this part of it. But book a chef to come and cook for you and your friends at your house.
Yeah, anyway, I want to touch on his keynote about this. A couple of quotes I pulled from it.
Please.
And one, these are verbatim. I've been asked this question. After 2 billion guests, what have you learned? Has one person ever asked that question framed that way? Tell me, Brian, after 2 billion guests, what have you learned?
What have you learned?
And he said that he learned that all people are intrinsically good. 99% of people are good. 99%. Let me just flag though. After 2 billion guests, 99% are good. Look, I'm no mathematician here.
But I reckon that's not true.
No, I'm going to say, but what's 1% of 2 billion? That's still a fucking lot of evil cunts.
I'm gonna go way crazier than Brian and say that 10% of people you can just write off.
20 million evil cunts. The other line that stuck out to me is he said, right now with Airbnb, the thought struck him, what if people monetize their time instead of their homes? Brian, that's called working. That's called having a job.
Yeah, that is literally underpinned the global economy.
What if people monetize their time
wage
instead
labor,
of their homes?
Yeah, wage labor.
What if?
And that replaced tilling the field, peasantry. Yeah, we figured that out.
But what if?
Yeah, well, what if you could monetize your time?
Rather than your homes.
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder what my perspective is.
Yeah. We've run some A/B testing and we've figured out, after a huge amount of user surveys and A/B testing, that 8 hours labor, 8 hours rest, 8 hours sleep is basically perfect.
I know most of you are thinking about, but I just monetize my home.
Yeah, no. But what about your time? Yeah. Now, some of you may be sitting there and being like, wait a minute. I feel like Airbnb has done this before. They have repeatedly since 2016. They have attempted to do exactly this.
Yeah, experiences.
They've now split it out into 3 categories. You have your accommodation. I don't know what whatever they call it, stays, whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know what they call it. Then you have experiences, and then you have services.
Yeah.
So there's 3 tabs on their redesigned website.
And this is the genius kind of new idea. As you said, they did experiences. They tried it before. During COVID, they had to tighten the belt buckle, understandably, because obviously Airbnb was in the crosshairs when it came to COVID, and they got rid of it then. They cut a lot of the chaff. But Brian says it was about a year ago, the OpenAI coup had just happened, and he had a bunch to do with He's supporting his boy Sam as part of the open coup, talking to Satya Nadella. There's all this. He was fucking throbbing.
Yep.
Like, he was charged up. Like, he says this, not verbatim, so this is no longer a quote, but this is me paraphrasing. He was absolutely fired up.
Yep.
He was fired up after being part of this, like, epic event, and he was pacing up and down his apartment in New York or in LA or whatever it was, in LA, and he happened to be by himself, like his wife and family weren't there. And this is now a direct quote. I was basically going from room to room, just pouring out this stream of consciousness manifesto, like Jack Kerouac writing On the Road. I basically said, we're not just a vacation app. We're going to be a platform, a community. And he wrote this screed that was to be the future of Airbnb, where, inspired by OpenAI and just pulsing,
turgid,
with, you know, the adrenaline that came post the OpenAI coup that he was like adjacent to, Airbnb is going to be the everything app. That's what inspired it.
Yeah.
And he wrote this On the Road-esque manifesto.
Yeah.
Which he apparently then brought back to his team of high-level executives at Airbnb and gave to them to digest, and they went, fuck yeah.
So he had this psychedelic vision quest and arrived at kind of the same product he'd already arrived at 8 years earlier with experiences on Airbnb.
Yes.
Again, this is why it comes back to the fact where it's like, I get this guy is probably personally very charismatic. All of us have been swept up in the energy of a personally charismatic person. And maybe a day later you've thought about that interaction with a person and been like, that guy was a fucking idiot. But in the moment, he took me on a journey. I consider myself that kind of person.
Yeah, well,
I'd like to think so. Maybe that's you in listening to the Down Around podcast. You go
to explain our opinion to someone else, and you're like, hold on.
Yeah, you're like, actually, you know what? I listened to a fascinating podcast episode about generative AI, and they are like, what are you talking about? You sound demented. Maybe you've experienced that as regards to Down Around podcast. But anyway, so Brian Chesky has gone on. Yeah, he's ripped his clothes off. He's like the Stop Coney guy.
Yeah. Well, there's a few. Okay, firstly, before we get into the ins and outs of like why this is an interesting idea, to say the least, and, you know, I think we can get into the business model and whatnot in a moment. I can't work out which of these four is the catalyst for it. One being he, you know, read that founder mode essay that was kind of about him and just got insanely fired up. It just really pumped up his tires so big that he's like, I got to keep doing founder mode. I can't just be a really successful now profitable
and public
rentals app. No, I'm founder mode.
I have to be the mediator of all human experience.
Exactly. That's one. OpenAI stuff obviously got him pretty charged up. He says that himself. Midlife crisis, as you know.
Wired identified this.
Like this he's 42, 43. Is that not peak midlife? I feel like that's like...
Yeah, that's peak midlife crisis. And he's in the middle of like a company midlife crisis. It's IPO'd. It's a mature
business. Yeah.
So he's hitting that on many fronts. Yes.
Yeah, and as you said, like we don't really talk about Airbnb that much, other than like
it's sort of a feature of
like tweaking relationships between both sides of a marketplace. And number 4 is ayahuasca. I've got written down.
I assume that it's probably a little bit like I would be surprised if he hadn't had an ayahuasca vision quest at some point.
Yeah,
he seems like the kind of guy who would do that and find it meaningful.
I feel like in the last 18 months, he's had some form of psychedelic experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it may well be a combination of all 4 of these things has been the catalyst for Airbnb can no longer just be...
They're not mutually exclusive. But, look, yes. So...
Let's get into it.
Well, let's talk about like the more cynical version, which is like the company at least going through a midlife crisis. So we'll give a bit of like a slight account of where Airbnb is at, right? They are a profitable business. They're post-IPO, which is normally when businesses kind of lock in and stop doing silly stuff. Think about Uber. Uber does not do any silly, crazy stuff anymore.
No.
They are a boring business. They've found their niche. They work towards that. They extract value. Airbnb, this is my interpretation of it. They are a household name. Hundreds of millions of people have an account, and use Airbnb. Uber basically won their struggle. Uber was an illegal business that when Travis Kalanick found them out, expanded dramatically, went to war with a million different governments and jurisdictions, replaced the taxi industry. The taxi industry is obviously not gone, but they are in markets all over the place. They became boring, they locked in, and now they're expanding in their patch, right?
Dara Khosrowshahi.
Dara
Khosrowshahi.
Yep. Former Expedia CEO, not a fiery, inspiring founder type, but a wonderful administrator of a mature business.
Yeah.
Airbnb has not won any battle. They are still constantly fighting against cities, states, and countries about the legality of their business. And I feel like that will never stop.
Of course it won't, because it's like disrupting kind of a fundamental aspect of human life, which is like living in a home. I actually don't know when the first home was, but the concept of the home certainly been around a while.
A roof. Essentially a roof.
Well, I mean, a community, I suppose.
A bit of shelter.
Community is the optimal word here, because obviously that is what Airbnb kind of uproots. Changing the fabric of where we live, it's rather impactful, I'm saying. That's a certain level of disruption that even Uber can't really aspire to.
No, well, yeah. Who does Uber go up against? Like existing transportation models.
Definitely some immigration stuff and like fundamentally uplift, like, labor
rights
and whatnot. But that said, it's still not as strong as like...
It disrupts local labor markets, but...
Not like a community is now like 70% transient.
Anytime you have a market, whether it's like a national market or it's like a local one, like, I don't know, Australia versus Byron Bay. I think we talked about this in the last episode, where it's like the research is pretty equivocal about, the research is not particularly definitive on what the effect of short stay rentals are on national housing markets, but it's pretty obvious that like they do distort local housing markets in places in like tourist towns, Bondi,
I mean,
wherever.
Literally the whole idea of Airbnb is that it decreases friction from short-term rentals and short-term stays, right?
Yep.
It's like in the past, it's much easier to have a house just to rent it out, for example, on a long-term stay, because it's hard to find. It was fundamentally harder to find people to book short-term stays, and the costs were higher. You'd have to have someone to fully manage the property, to be fully advertising and taking a larger percentage. So short-term rentals were like much harder to actually run. Literally, obviously, this is not genius stuff here. Airbnb's whole business model was reducing that friction, making it far easier to create short-term rentals. So all of a sudden you have far more short-term rentals on the market, i.e. taking the place. I mean, land is obviously like a finite resource, taking the place of what would otherwise be longer-term rentals. That's going to create some distortions to markets that previously were far more stable.
Yep, and especially in ones where, there is a high demand for short-stay rentals. Like, as we said, tourist towns, popular tourist suburbs, like areas like Bondi or whatever, you're going to see an impact. But the point is the moment you have like a housing shortage in any of these sort of areas, people are going to look at Airbnb and be like, you're fucked. We need to clamp down on this. Tons of cities have done it. And unlike Uber, where they've kind of, in many cases, sort of lost disputes with Uber in the long run, Airbnb, cities like Barcelona, New York have pretty stringent hotel regulations or short stay regulations on there. So they haven't even really won that regulatory battle.
It's always
they're a mature business with a dark cloud over them in any city that decides it's going to clamp down on them.
Yeah.
So there's that. So we have like the regulatory battle. But the second part of it, and this is why they keep trying to get into experiences and services, which is what they've done again now with this crazy everything app branding, is that even if you are an Airbnb power user, you use it a lot more than the average person. Let's be honest, unless you're someone who's traveling all the time for some bizarre work you do, you are probably opening Airbnb purposefully several times a year.
Yeah.
Maybe there are people, I'm sure there are people who open Airbnb for fun and scroll through listings, but I only do it when it's purposeful.
But that's what he says. So like he wants you to be opening it up if you're like, what do I want to do this weekend? Or, I need a haircut, blah, blah, blah. Now, this isn't revolutionary.
No.
There are obviously like other apps that exist like this. In Australia, obviously Airtasker. In America, Fiverr. We have Fiverr here as well, obviously. Maybe that's slightly more digitally inclined, Fiverr, as opposed to Airtasker, TaskRabbit, or whatever. Yep. There's, these other companies that basically... a marketplace, just a marketplace for services, a services marketplace, not the fucking. I feel like it's as old as time. Like
it is. Yeah,
Gumtree and Craigslist basically did this.
Although Airbnb is pitching slightly more professionalized than lots of.
Yeah, they reckon it's going to be curated.
It's curated stuff. So obviously on Airtasker you can just like post, I need someone to come and collect all the leaves on my front lawn.
Yeah.
And then someone will be like, I will do that for
I've had mates who've air-tasked someone to drive them home from a Bucks party in like Ulladulla or whatever.
Yeah. Like you could do anything, and if someone's willing to do it. Whereas this Airbnb services thing is more premium or slightly more premium. The idea is that
ish though. It's still like the examples they're giving is like haircuts.
Yeah, haircut, but still you want a barber to come and the barber will have like a nice user page and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, but this is so like first stages you do this, and also like you're with your boys on a footy night and you hire a chef to come to your house to cook you food or whatever.
Yeah. A Michelin-starred chef. I mean, at least this first batch is very curated. They also...
That's almost for advertising, right? And they've done these deals with celebrities or whatever.
There's celebrity ones where it's like there's like a weird... I don't even understand what half of these fucking things are. Like they're advertising like some sort of like Sabrina Carpenter experience with Sabrina Carpenter, but it doesn't even say what it is. It's just full of like...
Maybe it's the same experience I had. It's like her security guard yells at me.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be good. I'd pay a huge amount of money for that.
I got that for free.
Wow. Crazy.
But point being, okay, there's so many different avenues you can go down. But number one is, I totally get it that right now they're saying like, no, these are experiences. Like these are once exclusive, curated Airbnb. You can only get this on Airbnb. You can do tackle practice with like an NFL, what are they even called? Linebacker? I don't know if they do tackling. The big boys. The boys at the front?
NFL big boys. Yeah.
Yeah, the blockers. They block.
Yeah. Also, I'll clarify it here. On the earlier version of this, like the experiences thing, it was still very much a holiday thing. Like, you would go to Barcelona or whatever
with a local who's going to show you like the local
way of like going to a cooking class or having a walking tour.
Go to a bodegas in like Rio or whatever with a local and drink like longies like a local or whatever. Or go to like an art in a favela art class. Or whatever.
Brian Chesky wants you to open the services page or the service page on your Airbnb app and like do it in your own city.
Yeah.
To find stuff.
Which is different from experiences. Experiences is same as experiences was 8 years ago that they bailed on.
Yep.
But then he says that he was in manager mode back then. That was the issue. He delegated it all to other people to create these like these MBAs.
Sickening.
And that's why it didn't work. This time it's going to work because he's going to micromanage it. Genius. But yeah, so experiences, still being like go to friggin' Portland and learn to basket weave. This kind of thing with a local, I was going to say a slur. But you know what I mean? Like this kind of stuff. Whereas, yes, services are in your own, you're opening Airbnb every week because it's like, you know what? I'd love to get a pedicure in my home.
I'd love to get my dermabrasion, my face done.
Yeah. This kind of gear.
I'd love it for a Michelin-starred chef to come and cook for me.
This is Fugazi, this Michelin star chef stuff. This is marketing, right? Go to Japan and get a Michelin star chef to teach you how to cook ramen. That chef is doing that right now because Airbnb is paying them a shitload of money to do that.
The prices are too low.
Exactly, that's what I mean. It's
They're
like
super subsidized.
Like a few hundred. It's super subsidized. It's just marketing.
That's like $130 a head for like some sushi chef from a famous restaurant to come and whatever.
Yeah, like obviously that's like pure marketing stuff, like Sabrina Carpenter experience, and as I said, like NFL quarterback stuff or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Pure marketing. But what they want it to be is, as I said, like you do just hire a chef to come around to your barbecue or whatever and cook for you, but it's just some guy. What that boils down to, and this is kind of the whole crux of everything that's kind of weird and interesting about this, is like businesses like that exist, as we said, Airtasker, TaskRabbit, Fiverr, or whatever. These are not particularly successful businesses.
No.
Like, these are businesses that are worth in the hundreds of millions of dollars. because Brian Chesky talks about his whole thing is he's fucking obsessed with Apple and he wants to be Steve Jobs and he wants to be $1 trillion company. And he's not happy with being a $30 billion company that Airbnb is. It's time to turn this into the everything app, put him in the Google areas, put him in the Apple areas, put him in Aramco. He wants to be Aramco.
Again, it comes back to the difficulty of expanding, whereas in a mature business model, where it's like, how much further can you... You can't force people to go on more holidays per year. You can't force people to travel for work a lot more. You cannot force someone to open Airbnb, the app, and browse more than they currently do because it offers one thing, which is inflexible and unpredictable in demand, essentially. Whereas here, he's basically saying, as I said before, we want to be the middleman for all human commercial interactions.
Yes.
We want you to reflexively open the Airbnb app to scroll through and see what you can do.
Yeah.
On a daily basis.
Yeah, exactly.
And see what's about. And anytime you need to do anything, maybe there's a nice way you could do it in Airbnb.
There's just so many problems with this. Let's start firstly on the actual like services versus kind of property side of things. There is a big gulf between the whole deal with Airbnb was you had people who obviously already had some money doing a passive income thing, right? Investing. Like they're investing in property, trying to generate an annual return on that property versus someone just doing their job and you taking a cut of it, which again is the typical marketplace thing. But like there's really no... Like Airbnb is good for property because there's not that many, there's more and more, but there's not that many other places for me as a person who wants to stay in a property to go.
There are many different places to do it. And it's also like, you know,
what's the difference?
It's very clear that, as we said before, they're pitching it as like slightly more premium. It's curated.
But then again, what's the market for this?
Well, this is what I'm gonna say. Airtasker, which as we were just saying, useful platform. It's like a little bit ratchet.
Yeah.
Right? Anyone can do anything for you if you like, and your only sort of like recourse is that like they have the star rating system. People can rate. You can look at this guy and be like, you know, this guy that mows lawns has 2 stars and lots of negative reviews about the way he behaves. I'm not going to get that guy, you know? But because there's such an expansive range of things you can ask your Airtasker or Fiverr person to do, I would imagine they have remediation things for if they scam you or grope you or like fuck up or whatever. But Airbnb want to do it in a bit more curated way.
But that just lowers the TAM.
It doesn't scale at all. It's like...
Well, because they got to thread the needle as well. Because like, okay, we're talking about friggin' haircuts. Most people's relationship with the person who cuts their hair is they go back once a month. You're not going to mediate that through Airbnb every time if it's like an ongoing relationship. So therefore, it has to be one-offs. So therefore, there's like less shit to do.
Yeah. Totally. And it's also like the systems they have in place to evaluate whether a house is fit for purpose for listing on their platform, which is not perfect because obviously it's not hard to get a shitty Airbnb which has been mislabeled or like the landlord is crazy or it's in a bad neighborhood or whatever. And again, it kind of falls back on the rating system a bit.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I saw like literally today someone on Twitter doing literally the classic kind of at Airbnb, like, is this normal or whatever? The host was like, the hot water's out.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah,
it was like they were like, we're doing our best to get the hot water back on for your servers for your stay.
And they were like, well, can I cancel? Because like I want hot water. And they're like, hot water was not listed as one of the amenities of our property, so no, you cannot.
Yeah, exactly. And there's everyone that's used Airbnb has at least one story where they had an experience that was somewhat substandard. Either they were asked to do too many chores or something was not listed the way it was.
Or it's like they kind of took the photos, but it actually turns out like you didn't realize from the photos you're staying in a duplex with the owners next door, and the pool in the images was actually the next door neighbor's pool that happened to be in shot. This kind of gear.
That kind of stuff. And, you know, this stuff happens on top of the fact that Airbnb does have some reasonably robust systems for evaluating things, but stuff still slips through the cracks. How does that scale when you have, like, how does the Airbnb system evaluate whether someone is a good hairdresser versus a chef that comes to your house versus a tour guide? I saw one thing that was in the services was like going to like pub trivia in Sydney, $40 a head.
$40.
$40 a head. And I think it might have included some things on top of that.
The whole thing with pub trivia is that's how they lure you on a Tuesday.
Exactly. That's what makes you go to the pub when you otherwise wouldn't do that. And now I'm paying them for that. And I was looking at it and I was like,
don't get me wrong. I do get Kentucky exists. Like, there are people who travel and it's like, I want to go to Lisbon and I want to do some cool stuff. And they don't want to Google like cool stuff in Lisbon Reddit or whatever.
They can see a nice curated list of things.
There is a market for that. This is not an everything app market. I will pick up on the experiences side of things, and which does translate into the services as well, because this whole thing is like Brian Chesky goes on a long rant about there was this real optimism when Airbnb was getting started and he was going through Y Combinator and tech was seen as connecting things and that being a good thing, but then like somewhere it all kind of went amiss and, we kind of lost track of what we were doing with connecting and now everyone's mad. Well, we want to go back to like connection being a good thing and experiences not just being like getting on a red bus and going around Rome or whatever in a red bus, this kind of sanitized experience where, it's just commodified or whatever, like travel and experiences are commodified. Airbnb, we want them to be unique and special. It's like, mate, have you stayed at a friggin' Airbnb? If you want to talk about like sanitized and commodified, like the experience of staying in an Airbnb is probably one of the most like, well, not alienating, but it's hardly doing a lot to create connection. It's like get a copy and pasted message on an app, a password to open a lockbox.
Yeah, a key locker.
Go into a place that has 9 billion rules with like the shittest art ever, like IKEA art on the walls,
art, yeah.
And like the cheapest furniture and decor that you can imagine, and then having to like do your own dishes and wash it and leave it clean so that like someone you'd never met can go in and then assess the job you did of cleaning their apartment and then get a star rating on an app. And you're saying like we're the ones who are going to bring unique experiences back? No, you're going to do exactly the same thing. In order to make margin, this is what happens. Obviously, a marketplace, one of the things that a marketplace does is it drives down prices to, whatever the margin that the person who's happy with the lowest margin can make. What that means is largely automating most of the processes and standardizing them and replicating them. That's how you make money in a marketplace environment. From an experience perspective, what that means is commodifying the experience, making it repeatable, making so that you can like replace staff. They can come and go and basically give the similar enough experience so that you can make margin. What magical thing are Airbnb going to add where they're just going to get like some old granny in Rome is going to show you how to cook fucking pasta or whatever and is able to do that for like a bespoke group of like 2 people and show you this amazing time around Rome. And she does that, for like 10 different people a day? Obviously not. My point being like, if you want to give the Airbnb like vibe to experiences, it's going to be sanitized and shit. He has a weird idea of what Airbnb is because obviously he doesn't stay in like the normal Airbnbs.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And it's also like, I feel like the pitch here, again, it comes back to this like vaguely prestige sort of thing, but it's like clearly he is like, we've built a network of like people that share houses. We take people that have excess property capacity and people who want to holiday or stay for work or whatever, and we can connect these people.
But I'm going to even stop you there. But that's not even true, right? Because the market got skewed because, yes, to start off with, it was kind of that. It's like if you have a holiday house and it's not in use, people can stay in it. But now it's created its own kind of market.
It has,
it's distorted the market.
But I'll say you've built essentially a large network of renters and owners, right? And you can allocating capacity in that way, and rather than like through a traditional hotel network or whatever. But what they've also, he's noticed that they've built up is kind of like a giant distributed network of trust that they're trying to leverage.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, that is like one thing. Airbnb is like one of the most organic traffic websites in the world. In that people will type airbnb.com into their browser as opposed to, there's probably like 10 websites in the world that people do that to.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything else is through Google.
Yeah, because it's not. Yeah, exactly. You think, okay, I'm going to X city. I'm going to find an Airbnb there.
Yeah,
because I feel like the behavior. You may search hotels New York, if you're looking for a hotel in New York, obviously. And you might do that in Google, and maybe in the future you'll do it.
But you're not going to like Hilton.com.
No. And unless you're a member.
Yeah.
In which case you might do that. But like, yeah, you're right. There are very few. But if you're kind of like, I don't want to stay in a hotel. I want to stay in an Airbnb. You're actually, I don't even know if you couldn't do it through Google. I don't think it's a particularly well indexed site at all anyway through search engines. So you would go to Airbnb.com and use their
but
so
no,
you're right.
famously they had something like 80% of traffic to the like was like direct traffic, and so they didn't need to do a whole lot of marketing because people just went to Airbnb.com, which I get why it's like, we have this, so let's leverage it.
Yeah, but so there's that brand value, but there's also the trust layer, which is like, for all the stuff that you complain about Airbnb and like, you know, shitty hosts and having to do chores and whatever, they have built like an infrastructure of trust, where it's the sense that you know that if something is really bad, you have a really bad experience, or something gets damaged or whatever, Airbnb has like some system for dealing with that. You're not thrown out. You're not absolutely cast aside. And that's actually really hard to build.
Of course.
Like the insurance and like the trust systems and the support. So you can feel comfortable. Because it's not, when you think about it, you are staying in a random person's house and paying them. So there's the payment system, obviously, which is quite sophisticated, which includes all the fucking sub things you can be charged for. But the mere fact that you can suggests that they have a sophisticated payments infrastructure. And you know, if something goes horribly wrong, you can go through Airbnb and resolve it, even though you're staying in a random person's house in another country. That's pretty hard to build. And they have that infrastructure laid out that connects all these people. All these people have accounts. All these people have reviews applied to their name as a result of using the either hosting or staying. And they're like, we can use this crazy infrastructure that no one else can build from the ground up and just redeploy it into other shit.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I get the impetus.
I have had an Airbnb account for like 15 years.
Yeah.
And I'm sure
I've
you're
seen
the
that.
same.
Yeah. Well, I think on the Airbnb episode we read back.
We read our reviews from like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Not many companies can claim that, and there's not that level of social proof, which is why it also comes this idea that he's like, it's got this fucking history of you. It should be like your digital ID.
Your ID stuff. This is the other thing. And I think that like he admits that that's a slightly more stretch goal, but they are working towards the idea by including now ratcheting up the amount of ID you need to give to Airbnb so that you can, I mean, this digital identity thing has been less white whale that I think, again, Facebook saw the same thing. Apple and Google have moved slightly slower with it, but during COVID as well, remember there was a consortium that was kind of built up to try and create these kind of digital ID things. I know this sets off, there's a percentage of the population that this sets off, like, I mean, if you want to press the buzzer on maybe, I'd say 8% of the population with regards to like going off on a paranoid rant, I think digital identification is one of those.
It's a hot button issue. I'm going to shoot it down, not just on the basis that there are many people who find it an instrument of Lucifer, but also the fact
mark of the beast, folks. That's like, what we're talking about.
If, you know, was that bad?
It was a stale chip.
All right. If I had to like lay out all the companies that are attempting digital ID and have the infrastructure to tackle it, am I really picking Airbnb over Google, Microsoft, Apple? Who have been, all these companies have been like struggling to do this for many, many, many years.
Yeah.
Am I going to bet on the hotel company, which is like constantly in the sights of regulators the world over, including like municipal regulators, which most tech companies don't have to deal with. They don't have to deal with like the city of Sydney being mad at them.
That's true.
But
that's the thing. He wants to be, he's decided again, this goes back to classic Dan Round. Can't you just be happy with
your
business that's
$30 billion business?
Your $30 billion profitable business. Apparently not.
Yep.
Apparently that's not good enough anymore. I was saying that it's perfectly fine to have a business that
doesn't grow,
that pays all your employees slightly above average, gives them decent holidays, good sick leave, and, makes you a bit of coin on the side. That sounds like a nice business to me. 30 billion? Profitable business?
I'd give yourself a pat on the back. You've done well, Brian Chesky.
I'm not doing founder mode well enough. Come on, fuck off. Like, just chill out, Brian. Like, I get that, whoa, Sam Altman's scanning people's eyes with a fucking robot in order to determine that they're real and not AI. The problem that
that he caused.
he caused.
And now he's trying to solve with crypto.
With crypto and eye scanning or whatever. Like, I get that seems cool.
Yeah, I'm sure that's impressive. I'm sure I get that you want to be Steve Jobs.
Yes, you evidently very much want to be Steve Jobs, and I get that. Like, he tried to cure cancer with orange juice or whatever it was.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
don't get me wrong. I love the iPhone. I think knocked it out of the park with the iPhone.
I think Steve Jobs he created some
shareholder value. That's for sure.
He spearheaded some technology that many of us use and appreciate today. And that's wonderful to aspire to, Brian.
You don't have to be that. Like, you created a marketplace for, fucking petty tyrant landlords
to enact their will upon hapless travelers.
Is that not good enough?
Are you not happy with that? Do you have to crowbar your way into all human commercial interactions as someone who clips 25% off the top? I don't even know if they're taking that much, but I think it's kind of like he's taking a fair bit off the top. Yeah. At least they do on hotel bookings, and maybe he would on the haircut, on getting the sushi chef to come in and make sashimi.
We haven't even got into the fact that and he's getting deep on this. Like, he is literally weighing in on icon design. This kind of thing. He's going real. He refers to himself as a designer, and I respect that as well. I like the fact that one refers to oneself as a designer rather than an operator or whatever it may be. But he is getting deep on making me get a barber come to my house via Airbnb and giving me a sweet fade.
So 15% cut across all services they want on Airbnb. I would stress and remind that Uber Eats takes 15 to 30% from restaurants and still barely fucking makes money.
That's what I mean. These other competitors are not doing that well. It's not like, ooh, over there I see a business worth $400 billion. I'd love a piece of that. It's like these are struggling to be valued at $1 billion. The biggest of these companies in the world are struggling to be. What's the market that he's getting into?
No, and all these. Maybe I'm just really getting what I was saying before, but when you become an everything marketplace, you functionally, each vertical within that has its own peculiarities and weirdness that, for example,
babysitting or whatever, it needs its own website.
There are apps where you can book haircuts, right? I can't remember what it's called, but there's an app that they use as the POS system in a lot of hairdressers now.
Yeah, it starts with S. It's
and you can book through that app, and it has it's a vertical SaaS business.
Yeah, the Newtown place has whatever. And also you can use it to virtually line up to a barber shop and shit.
Yeah, she's like that, and it's that has its own universe, its own rules, its own way of doing things.
Having someone to feed your pets while you're on holiday has its own app with its own rules and its own shit and people with their own star ratings. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Their own infrastructure and way of doing things. And if you try to cram it all into the Airbnb app and you flatten the experience, it may work to a certain extent, but I don't think you can make a prestige curated experience.
No, you can't.
You end up with Airtasker where it's just a reasonably smooth, nice interface with some star ratings that's slapped over what is essentially a crazy fucking Wild West.
Yeah, I will say, I get being what about that, but with the trust and identity? Because that's the thing.
The we bring from whatever.
Yeah, because we have to make you upload your birth certificate and passport and whatever, so you can't commit crimes. Or you can, but, we have your birth certificate. But yeah, it's I could do that, or I could go to my local barber. And yeah, I'm sure there are a bunch of people who would love to have a personal chef come around for the UFC once a month or whatever it is. Again, is that a business? Are there enough of those niches out there and people doing experiences. It is really dystopian though, because what the vision is that anytime anyone just kind of vaguely wants to do anything, they open Airbnb and then book it via the app, right?
And,
like that's the idea.
And this is the last point I'd make on that particular aspect, where it's like the everything app fantasy, apart from putting aside all the stuff about whether one can even work in Western markets at all, it works in China, even putting aside the QR code thing, because it's built on the top of a messaging app. At the end of the day, an app that you communicate with people in your life is always going to be like at the bottom of the stack of the things you do.
Yeah.
Like that's always going to be your most used app, unless you're completely antisocial, will be a messaging app where you talk to people.
Yeah.
That's fine. WeChat is that. So you're automatically opening it multiple times an hour, and then you can branch out to other stuff on top of that. Building an everything app on top of something that currently you're opening charitably 10 times a year.
Oh, that's very charitable. Yeah.
Hey, that's incredibly charitable. You are a real mover and shaker.
Yeah. Well, ish. I mean, I'm a hotel boy, and a resort lad,
And so you should be. You are who Airbnb should be trying to win back and use more often. Like, you are their TAM. You're a person who probably used Airbnb a lot when you were younger.
Absolutely.
And you've graduated to the beautiful clean sheets, icy cold air conditioner of
Absolutely.
Of
I don't get guilted. I don't get guilted for not making the fucking bed,
And you can do whatever you like in there.
Yeah, I could piss on the bed. I don't. I would never do that.
Exactly. You wouldn't do it, but if you did, they wouldn't even email you about it.
They wouldn't blink an eyelid.
They would say, okay. They'd send you an email and say, it'd be great to have you back again, Mr. Dixon. It is what it is, folks. I think my prediction is that they will go back to the drawing board, return to core business, and then in 18 months or so,
give it another crack.
24 months, they're going to come back with a rebrand with this same thing again, because their core business is boring and it's getting squeezed at a regulatory level and a competition level. Obviously they have the hotel and hospitality brands are trying to
none of that, like Google. Google. This isn't specifically for Airbnb, but it kind of is. You can book hotels and whatnot via Google, and including some of those kind of like rental things you can book kind of via Google
like
now.
A Google form.
They do Google Flights now. They're encroaching more and more on just like booking via Google. Searching for a hotel in Lisbon or whatever, and just like booking via Google.
Do not even get me started on AI that lets you... AI agents that book a holiday for you.
He mentions this as well.
Yeah.
It's like the future of Airbnb is like, this is now going to be an AI that knows the places you like to stay, knows the areas of neighborhoods you like to stay, knows the type of haircut you want to get. It's going to know you well enough one day to book travel for you.
Yeah.
He used the down round thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And we didn't even... Yeah, the AI was a big part of this. But again, it was just like recommendation stuff.
Yeah. But also, what absolute moron are you going to try and convince that Airbnb knows people better than fucking Google or Facebook or Apple? Who thinks that you're able to like join the dots because, he stayed at like this cool place in Austin and also this place in New York. I've now got a complete idea of exactly who this person is.
They'll be like, this cool cat stayed in Brooklyn, New York.
He did a jazz lesson in New Orleans.
This cool cat. Anyway, I don't have high hopes for it, folks, but
can't wait till the day that Airbnb can automatically book my travel for me.
Brian, I'm excited to hear what you have for us in 18 months' time.
Anyway, we've got a lot to talk about in episode 2 this week. If you're enjoying the conversation, I highly recommend that you subscribe to Premium Downround so you can hear us talk about. I'll regale you with exactly what we're going to discuss. I took some notes here. Don't worry about it. We will be discussing on the next episode. Here's what I got written down. Grok white genocide LLMs putting the thumb on the scale.
Yep.
Recipe Tin Eats. My Oven. Dutch MMA. ChatGPT in iMessage. Dear browser. So if any of that interests you, Well, we'll be covering. I can't guarantee we're going to cover every single one of those.
Or even any of them.
Or even any of them. That's what I have written down. That's all I can guarantee is I have them written down. We may or may not.
All we can guarantee is 30 to 40 minutes of more talking.